Cue the music!
Cue the music! All right, welcome to Composerish, episode 4. I am Kevin MacLeod, and I write music. Joining me today and every day is a man who is intelligent as he is good-looking, Brian Teo.
I don't 100% know how to take that. I feel like I will choose to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? I need to start out this episode a little meta because I confused a few thousand people last week, and I'm not exactly proud of it. I just released episode 3 to my main YouTube channel, and I didn't tell anyone what it was or what was going on, and everyone was like, what the hell is going on here? So sorry to everyone that I confused. Yes, it is a podcast and where we talk about composer-ish things.
You know, I thought that was actually kind of obvious, but it seemed like a lot of people were really confused about that. In the comments, everyone's like, I was expecting music. This is not music. And I was like, well...
This is not music. I do not like this.
It sure isn't.
And the other thing I want to talk about is this little jingle that came in last week. It's time for Kevin's Real Instruments, Chetty Percussion. Man, Brian, that was amazeballs.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the hell out of that. I was so excited when I heard that. I'm like, I have to show everybody. But everyone was so confused. People didn't even listen to 6
Well, I
minutes
mean,
in.
there was a lot of jokes, I think, that were based on old episodes. We're jumping in on episode number 3 as like a lot of people's introduction to this. I believe the other 2 episodes are available to your Patreon subscribers, though. Am I correct?
They are, and they will be available everywhere eventually. So what went into that? I got to know because I can't do that.
It was an awful lot.
I don't have those chops.
It was more than I was actually expecting. I thought it was just like a short little joke, but the amount of time and effort that went into it was probably more than should have been. But I mean, in order to make it funny, I feel like you have to commit.
I think you're right.
So I had to really squash the vocals down. You were kind of singing off the cuff and like sort of just kind of creating a melody with no real pitch reference. Which when you put synths and stuff in, you want to try to make like a poppy house beat or whatever is kind of an issue. So I had to use a couple auto tuners on there because the auto tune is great, but it's best if your pitch is close and then you can kind of snap it to where it needs to be. But if the pitch is kind of like, we're not really sure what the melody is, you'll get like a lot of tuning transients where like the pitch will glitch because it's not really sure where to snap it to.
Right.
So you use an auto tuner to get the pitch kind of close, and then you use another one to kind of get it closer and get it closer. And then at a certain point, I was able to, once I had like stable pitches, I was able to use Logic's flex pitch to like change the actual melody of what you were singing to make it closer to like a share-ish type thing. And then I had to bounce that out. And this is like, I ended up bouncing it out about 4 different times each iteration. And then finally at the end, I had to use flex time to grab all of the notes and like stretch them to be in the rhythm that I wanted. The problem with Logic's flex time, and I don't know if this is, maybe this is just user error, but I was trying to do this as quickly as possible, which ended up taking several hours. But the problem with flex time is you can't stretch notes beyond the bounds of the track itself. So let's say, like if I'm taking all of like the notes and I'm stretching them to be longer, all the notes that come afterwards are then getting squashed because they won't stretch beyond the bounds of the actual track. So I ended up having to like stretch about half the track out, bounce it out, and then take a raw version of the other auto-tune track and then chop it in half and then stretch the notes backwards in the other direction and then splice the two together in order to get the vocal stuff. And then after that, it was just a matter of like synth design and stuff like that. I hate using presets. So I could have saved some time if I would have just like gone through a bunch of like house beat sort of things. But I figured at this point, since I spent so much time on the vocals, might as well let's just go in.
Yeah, no, solid. So no, I have questions about so you used like 3 auto tuners in series?
Yes.
Like, why didn't you just start with flex pitch? It seems that should work.
It will if the note is stable, but like if the note is kind of like warbly, it will sometimes interpret that as just being like vibrato, in which case you can squash that down and create like a stable pitch. But sometimes it'll break the note up into like multiple pitches if it thinks that it's actually like distinct notes.
Yes.
And so and you can take those fragments and then like kind of stick them all in the same line so they're the same pitch series and it sounds like one contiguous note. But because like,
but then you get those little glitchy bits
exactly,
in between, right?
And it's trying to take like these the formants and stuff, and it kind of is shifting those as well. So you get like these weird sort of like hollow sounding notes in the middle. It just, to me, it sounds better if I like try to get it as close to stable pitches as possible, and then I can kind of manipulate it from there.
All right. So
the other way to do it, if you really want to, is on the, I think it's a vocal transformer in Logic. You can click a button that says roboticize, and that will basically take everything and make it like one single pitch all the way through.
Oh, right.
And then you can like then chop up the different notes and place them with the flex pitch. Then after that, I didn't think of that at the time. I was, and you do lose a little bit of character in the actual singing voice as well. So it's give or take, depends on what your aesthetic goal is.
Well, spectacularly well done, my friend.
Thank you.
Well done indeed. This is the kind of thing that happens only when you get like composers making podcasts. Like people will sing bad jingles all the time, but to turn it into that, damn.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right. So again, sorry for confusing everyone last week. Just had to get that out of the way.
Most of the people listening to this podcast probably know who you are, but I'm just a voice, right?
Well, I'm just a voice. Most people don't know who I am. Most people know my music. Most people have never heard me. They've never seen me. I've only gone to like 2 conventions ever. I haven't played music live like as me in, I don't know, 20 years?
I think you had a band that was playing at least in Wisconsin, a couple gigs, right?
Oh, yes. And nobody going to those gigs has any sort of technology that will allow them to listen to this, I'm sure.
So you only play in the most remote of places.
It was literally the most remote of places. We were hours away from population centers because that's where you can get gigs that way. Like and people are happy to have you. Even though you're playing like this weird improv accordion drum duo.
Electronic accordion.
Electronic accordion. Yeah, and the sad part about the electronic accordion, so basically I was playing guitar, rhythm guitar, and bass guitar on my accordion. And at no point during the entire evening did anything remotely resembling an accordion sound come off of stage. We were just a rock band. It was just a 3-person rock band. I was doing guitar, bass. We had a drummer, and then we had a lead guy who was also doing harmonica and stuff.
So it's like a accordion synth. Then I guess it's the same as like a keyboard that doesn't actually sound like a piano.
Right. Yeah. So, but with the you can't. I mean, you could probably play bass and a little bit of guitar on a normal keyboard, but if you want to get rhythm guitar in there, you run out of hands.
Yeah.
However, there are sufficiently good buttons on the accordion so that you can do you're strumming chords with your left hand as you're playing the bass line with your left hand. And then you can chord with your right hand, or you can do leads or whatever you need to do. It's really fun.
That's kind of what the accordion was made for. Am I correct? It's like it's a self-accompanying instrument.
Yeah, it's a one-man band. And, much like the piano.
It kind of makes me wonder why it's not a more popular controller than for music.
I have no idea. Or why it's just not more. Yeah, because once you go electronic, you can make it sound like anything you want.
Right. And I feel like people have tried making like a Walker, a portable version of a keyboard in the keytar, which just seems like an incredibly inefficient means of playing the piano. But with the accordion, you not only have the keys, but you also have all these other buttons that are ergonomically mapped out to be able to be reached by finger. It always seemed to me that
Right.
the keytar, you had a waste of a left hand because people would use their right hand to play the keys, and then they just hold this neck because they wanted to make it look like a guitar, which they'd use to like change patches. And in some like more modern versions, they have like a like a touch strip to control CC data or something.
Right. Yeah. So there's a touch strip. Frequently, there's a pitch bend wheel, mod wheel. Some of them, the angle that you're holding it at, you can route that to something MIDI. So like when you like really lean back with it, you know, it'll actually do something.
What's that called again? Not potentiometer. Accelerometers. Yeah. Have you ever heard of an eigenharp or an eigenharp?
Eigenharp.
It was like this is like a space age instrument, I believe, from the 80s. I'm sure some electronic music nerd out there is going to correct me. Maybe it's from the early 90s. I don't know. But it's played with lasers. And
oh, yes, I have seen that.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's sort of guitar-ish, but that was supposed to be the way of the future. They're incredibly expensive and just never took off.
There's got to be cheap ways to make them now.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I just don't think there's a demand. That's got to be like some electronic engineer college kids like project to remake an eigenharp or eigenharp. The other weird instrument that I feel like had a lot of promise and got a lot of press but never really took off was the Chapman stick.
The Chapman stick that's not electronic, but that's a great instrument. Electronic Chapman stick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in the same way that any guitar can be electronic, which means it's probably not great. I've seen them mounted with MIDI pickups and stuff, but I've mostly seen it being played like a bass that you tap. And it seems, oddly enough, is most popular in like world music ensembles.
Okay.
Or fusion jazz. And then I've seen it with like world ensembles where they have like a Chapman stick, electric cello, and some like tablas or something.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the same deal. You're covering a huge amount of note range in a fairly compact instrument, right?
But it's funny then that they have all these weird instruments. The accordion is something that people already know how to play. It's it's old enough instrument that it has a history of like technique behind it. And yet you're the only person that I know that has a MIDI accordion.
Well, that's because they all suck. Oh my God, do they suck. Even the one that I have sucks.
I thought that you got one that was built, I thought custom made for you. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't custom made for me. I've got the Roland something 5, TR5, I forget what they're called. They do make a bigger one, and it's just heavier. And so these things are not built to be MIDI controllers, and you can tell.
I love that. They're like, it doesn't actually have any more capabilities. It's just heavier.
It's heavier. I mean, it has, quote, better sounds in it, you know?
Oh, like onboard sounds.
Like onboard sounds that play through the onboard speakers. I'm like, what?
I mean, who wants either of those? I think it would be more prudent to like have MIDI out and then be able to like buy modules that you can load sounds onto, because then it has more flexibility. But like, I don't. Yeah. Roland has got some decent
plug
stuff.
Plug it into your computer, man.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what you end up doing. Am I correct?
Yeah, I had to plug it into the computer, and then I had to write a bunch of scripts on the computer because I couldn't get the things to differentiate off of different channels, and like it was pain. So to my knowledge, I'm the only one who's done this.
I mean, I guess it's like maybe it's a chicken and egg situation where like they don't make a more sophisticated MIDI accordion because there's no market, but maybe there's no market because there's not a more sophisticated MIDI accordion.
Yeah, God knows. I mean, you do culturally today, you look like an idiot when you stand on stage with an accordion, even though, you know, you're playing some hardcore 80s metal cuts. Like, half the people didn't even believe we were playing live.
I don't know. I feel like you could get away with it in Brooklyn. You just need to be some like super hipster asshole, and then people would think that it's the greatest thing ever because or at least, I don't know, maybe this is like a 2000 thing. I might just be too old. But that was the trend for a while. It was just like pop music played with stupid instruments.
Yeah, but it sounded like really close to the. I mean, we had a really good rock sound going.
Well, I think the problem is that you guys were probably capable musicians. if you were shittier, then it would have been more like a novelty, and it would probably be more successful.
Right, because if you're just hanging out at the bar pointing the other way, it's like, nah, it's a pretty average bar band, and we were a pretty average bar band.
Right.
It was just a very weird bar band. I had a great time doing that, and I'm glad that I'm never going to do that ever again.
Well, never say never. You know, I mean, the time might come where you need to dust off the old the old MIDI accordion. Like the U.S. Army comes to you and you're like, Kevin, we need your services. Your country needs you. Out of all of the people in the United States, you're the only one with a list of specifications and training.
I have a very specific set of what did I forget the quote?
Yeah, very specific set of skills.
Very specific set of skills. And man, I got to talk a little bit about this band because I built the rig, the setup, so that we could go from in the vehicle to set up on stage in 20 minutes.
Which is incredible that you actually think about that.
You've set up and torn down before. You know how much of a nightmare this is.
Yeah,
It's usually in New York, you can go in with a guitar, plug into the house amp, go through their house mic, and be fine. Use the house lighting. That does not happen in rural Wisconsin. There is no house anything. You bring all of your speakers, you bring all of your lighting, you have to bring everything. And my God, like that one, I don't know, like when I was doing the big band, it was a little more than, we used to ask for 2 hours to set up. We could do it in an hour in a pinch. It's usually about an hour and a half and then another hour teardown. But yeah, no, that's the part that I hated the most. So,
I mean, how long are sets if you're looking for like a 2 hour setup?
You do 3 1 hour sets with like 2 half-hour breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend that was in a rock band, just like they didn't do covers. They were just in their own original rock band, and they went on tour.
Yeah.
They had booked a show in Wisconsin, and when they got there, the guys were like, "All right, so how long you guys want to play for?" And they were like, "Oh, we got like 45 minutes." And they were like, "Whoa, we were thinking you were going to play for like 6 hours." Or something like
4
that.
hours.
Yeah.
4 hours is pretty
It
standard.
was maybe 4 hours. They're like, "Oh, we thought you were going to be here for like all night." And they're like, No. And they were like, "Yeah, we're just playing a set." And then like, so they did their thing, but then the entire time people were asking for like classic rock requests and stuff. And they were like, that's not really, we don't really do that. So then by the end, they ended up just getting kind of drunk, and then they stayed a little bit longer, and they just started playing covers of stuff. Like they played some like 80s rock hits they just happened to know, and then they tried to fake their way through some Hall & Oates. And people loved it. They were like singing along. They kind of biffed a little bit, but it didn't really matter because like people were just so pumped to be there. And my friend was like, to their credit, even though we weren't the cover band, the classic rock cover band that they were looking for, people were actually really friendly and super happy. And they were like drunk people coming up and giving us tips and stuff like that.
Yes.
And it was great. And that gig then ended up spawning a project that unfortunately became, I think, even more successful. They ended up making an actual Hall & Oates cover band from that gig.
Nice.
They ended up seeing a decent amount of gigs. Like, I mean, for the longest time that I knew this guy, I actually thought that was his band. Like, when he's like, "Oh, no, that's just a side project. My real band is this other thing." So, word of warning to those who might be trying to book bar gigs in the Midwest. If you're like a traveling band, you might want to try to figure out what the deal is. You might not be like a 45-minute to half an hour set in a lineup. You might just be the whole night.
Yeah, you hire, and you might have to bring everything. You have to bring lighting, you have to bring a sound system.
So the bars don't have a PA or anything.
No.
But I'm guessing that these places have live music like often. Am I correct?
Yeah, they'll have live music. There's 2 different kinds, right? I think in the city of Green Bay, there's like 2 places that are known for live music all the time. They have PAs that you can set up in. But if you're just in a bar in the North Woods, no. They got their jukebox hooked up to their, 25-year-old speakers hanging from chains on the ceiling, and that's it. You don't plug into that.
I wonder if bands have ever gotten burned for that. Like they show up and they're like, "All right, so where's your stuff?"
It's like, where do we plug in? Oh, there's the wall outlet over there.
Yeah, right.
No.
And I wonder how many uncomfortably acoustic sets have had to be had then as a result.
My guess is 0. Or it's got to be low. Like if you're around here, everybody knows you got to bring your own PA.
If you're around there, but I mean, what about touring bands?
Yeah. No, dude, nobody nobody comes here.
Okay, well, my friend did.
Do they do that? Yeah, and it changed their life.
Yeah.
I gotta warn you though, the audiences here are spectacular. They're amazing. They are not discerning.
Which is, I guess, both good and bad, right? like, in some ways,
you're gonna have a good time on
yeah.
stage.
In some ways, like you can't fuck it up, but in other ways, it's like, God damn it, you could play like the best gig of your life, and nobody would know the difference. They'd just be like, oh man, that was really fun.
Friend of mine, Mike Camper, was a circus clown. Been working on his routines, years and years. He's very good at them. And he was touring around the country, and he came to Wisconsin, and he did a show, and he got the most amazing standing ovation of his entire career, I believe in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Wow.
And he said, "This is it. I have found my people. These people understand me. I'm staying." And he stayed in Wisconsin. And over the next couple of years, he realized, oh, no, wait. They do that for everyone. The people here are just really, really nice.
Which is weird. Appleton has a pretty vibrant performing arts scene, I think. They have that giant performing arts center that went up not too long ago. They have a music school in Appleton, which I happen to go to.
Yeah.
It seems like people should be more jaded. I don't know, like maybe like
I mean, coming from the Broadway of the Midwest, Appleton, Wisconsin, you would think that, but nope. They apply for it. They applaud for everyone.
They actually, I believe, on the tour for the Lawrence Conservatory, they talked about themselves as being the Juilliard of the Northern Midwest, and I was like, oh. I'm gonna count that as a strike against you. Like can't you just be the Lawrence instead of being the some other school? It's like, I'm sure you all have heard about these very famous musicians. We have musicians just like that. like, I thought you were about to tell me that they went here. It's like, oh no, they went to much better schools. But we have people that are just like that. Trust me. Juilliard has a reputation where, people, you just mention that name and it opens doors. So I guess at that point, it probably matters very little how good you are, because you can just say Juilliard. And for most gigs, it probably doesn't really matter that much. Like the difference between being good and very, very good matters more, I think, to the musicians than it does to the general public. Would you agree?
Yeah. General public, by and large, cannot tell a good string quartet from an amazing string quartet. And you know what? To be fair, unless they're playing something really... Like, if you're playing the canon in D, I can't tell a really great quartet from a good quartet. I can't. They're fine.
I'd like to say that I could, but I don't know that I could either. I'd have to hear actual recordings side by side and then blind listen to them, and then I could choose, and then we'll see if I'm right.
But if you're just going to somebody's wedding, you're like,
oh yeah,
good. They did their job. They played their notes.
Yeah, and at that point, it's less about the music in that case than it is about the event. Like the music is very much background. It's not like you're going to a concert to watch somebody and scrutinize a performance. I guess that's one of the benefits of playing a novelty sort of instrument or a stupid instrument, because there's going to be a lot less scrutiny. Stupid instrument tends to gain a lot more interest than actually good band, or you have to be like really, really, really good in order to get anybody's attention. But I feel like my experience performing live, it seems that you have to have something to grab people's attention. Maybe, and this is probably different in Wisconsin, right? Because you can actually just be like a mediocre band and everyone will love it. But in New York, it's like,
absolutely,
you have to have a hook. There's got to be like, okay, somebody's got to play a stupid instrument. So if somebody was playing MIDI accordion here, it would probably gain a lot of attention. Or if somebody, like, I don't know, microphoned a tub of water and played house beats with some forks on it or something. I don't know. Like, that's the sort of thing that people are like, oh man, did you see this thing? It was so good. Or you'd have to be like just a classic band that was so insanely good that people were like, God damn.
Sungazer, I'm looking at you.
Right. I don't know. Is that a band?
That's a band. They're an insanely good band.
Yeah. Have you seen their live show?
I have seen their live shows. I've not seen them live. I've seen their live shows on the internets.
And they're fantastic.
They're a fantastic band.
I am sort of, at least at one time, and kind of still am, I guess, part of a scene in New York called Chiptune, which is like a bunch of people that make music with old consoles. The Game Boy is heavily favored, but people have learned how to hack all this hardware and basically use these old gaming systems as synthesizers, et cetera, et cetera. I got in pretty early, back in like 2002, 2003, something like that, because I thought it was kind of fun. I was in music school at the time, and it was a way to blow off steam or whatever. But then when I moved to New York, I actually found out that there was like a scene for it. Like people would go out to like these clubs, and they'd get a bunch of chiptune artists, and they'd play live, and people would dance, and it was kind of like a 90s rave for nerds in the best possible way.
There's no instruments though.
Well,
there's no thing to play.
Either bring their Game Boy and plug it into like, a mixer, or like everyone always has like synthesizers or like a Chaos pad or whatever. I honestly just brought my laptop. I'm, I guess, pretty high tech or low tech, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
But like live performance,
unpure.
Yeah. But live performance in this situation is like always like one of the biggest problems, and I don't really know how to confront it. Like, especially this is like a thing in electronic music in general. After I started playing live, I started scrutinizing live performances of like quote unquote DJs or electronic musicians or whatever, like Dead Mouse or Skrillex or whatever. And you watch them like doing stuff live, and they have all this gear on stage, and they're like twisting knobs and like pushing buttons and jumping around. But after a while, I'm like, I don't think you're actually doing anything. Like, I don't think it's hard to see if there's like any actual correlation between what somebody is doing and the actual sound, because nobody knows what this gear does. It's not like a guitar where like you pluck a string, it makes a sound, you kind of know what that means. It's like a lot of stuff in electronic music can be pre-programmed. You can make one button do a lot of different things depending on what other key combinations you have or where it's being routed at the time or whatever. Or you can like even like load new presets in for each song. So like the same thing can be, the same key can do a different thing or whatever. Or you can be like tweaking something that is not necessarily even a note. It can just be like an effect parameter or whatever. So like nobody really knows, right? And so I just kind of wonder, like, how many people just kind of hit play and dance around. Like, I feel like that my approach has generally been like, if somebody wants me to play live, I'll do it. But I've tried a couple different things. Like I've tried triggering loops, and I've tried playing stuff over the top, and I've tried just doing the karaoke thing where you basically just hit play. It feels a little disingenuous, so I try not to pretend that I'm like doing something that I'm not. But in like, let's say like in the most live that I've ever had with this style of music, it's basically just been like triggering loops at different song section points. And there was a point where I realized at the best case scenario, I can make it not completely fail. Like it's never going to transcend the original track. It's just like I can do it as good as it is on the recording, or I can fuck it up. So really I guess the entertainment aspect there is like the potential for failure.
I guess
people could go just to watch me maybe fall on my face, and if not, then it's like, yeah, he made that sound exactly the way that it was supposed to on that track. But I've seen other people that like they say that they built their own synthesizers. I saw this guy pull out like a computer keyboard, and he played like a synth line on it. This is when I first moved to New York, and this is like a guy that I really looked up to. And he was like playing his solo, and it looked like he was just whacking at the keys. And I was like, I maybe he's doing something that I understand. So then I talked to him afterwards, and he was like, no, I actually each key plays a different note, and I was playing the solo live, and I was like, oh, okay. No, you weren't though. It's like it's fine. I mean, like the tempo was so incredibly perfect, and it was really fast. We're talking about like 16th notes at a good like danceable beat. That I was like, there's no way that you are playing a QWERTY keyboard that cleanly. Like there are like freaking violinists that have studied their instrument for like 30 years that can't play something that clean without like any sort of variance in tempo anywhere. Like there's no way. I don't buy it. And especially because he was doing it with his eyes closed and like sweating and whipping his hair back and forth. I'm like, nope. It kind of was like an eye-opening moment then, because I was like, I think there are. I'm not going to say that there aren't people that do live, because I've seen people that I'm like, okay, you actually are. I can see what you're controlling here, and that's cool. But I think by and large, a lot of electronic musicians just kind of like hit play and dance around. And if you ask any of them, I feel like most of them are probably going to deny it. But
I mean, you got to be getting that question every night.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what does it do? And people will come up with all this stuff. Like, when I've done like ambient music performances and like really droney stuff, that's all been live. Like I've done everything from the ground up, where it's like, I'll plug in a guitar or a cello or whatever instrument, a bowed cymbal to a microphone. I'll sample it live on the fly and then manipulate the sound in a sculptural process, but it's audible. Like, people can kind of hear what I'm doing as I'm doing it, and you kind of create this atmosphere or whatever. That and from that, I would write my software from the ground up. I'd make custom patches and come up with different things that I thought at least were clever at the time to manipulate this sound. But when it's like, when something has to be so rigid because it's timed, and especially like dance stuff or pop stuff where basically something changes every 4 bars, you can't really mess with that formula. Like, there's a specific point where it's expected that a chorus is going to happen, and if you miss that cue, then you biffed it. But then it also doesn't really give you much of a choice, because that means that you have to change something right then and there. So at a certain point, it's like, well, why, this can just be anything. Like, I think the most live performances that I've seen in this sort of thing is like when there's basically stuff is set up ahead of time. They might be triggering loops at different times. They might not be. And then like play like a synth lead line with the keyboard, but it's just like one single melody, which is not particularly challenging, but I guess it begs the question then, what is a live performance? Like, is it really the potential for failure? Because I guess like if you're going to see some like live violinist, like, I mean, they practice that thing so much that the potential for failure is very small anyway. Like, so what, like they're going to just nail it perfect.
And on the other side of the coin, if you're going to see like Katy Perry live, she doesn't need to sing live.
Well, I think actually most people don't.
She needs to dance. You need to be up there during your hit, and then the mic needs to be live when you address the audience. Hello Atlanta.
Right. And if somebody is like jumping around the stage and doing backflips and stuff, and they're not singing out of breath and gasping for air, then it's probably fake. Because like I don't
really fit.
Or like they're jumping up and down, but like the volume and pitch doesn't waver at all. It's just completely flat.
Right.
It's like, yeah. I'm sure that it's possible, and there are probably some people out there that do it. I've read about some pop stars that are like, oh, this person learned how to dance and sing at the same time. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they say that. But I don't know.
Yeah, they are doing it the hard way because nobody cares.
Yeah.
You're there for the show. You're there for the engagement. You're there to look at the person who made the thing and go, oh, look, a person made that thing.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked to other people that are in this scene specifically, and I'm like, how do you approach live performance? Because I always feel like whenever I'm asked to play live, it's always like a thing. I have to figure out what the trick is. And everybody's response, at least to the people that I've talked to, are always like, yeah, that's always kind of the problem. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, good. Great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I mean, but for most people, it's like they were told to find one parameter to kind of like control during the performance, and really it's just an opportunity to play their stuff live for an audience over a really big sound system and to get their material more exposure. But I think that anybody that would staunchly defend playing chiptune music live is either incredibly brilliant, which there's a lot of people in that scene that are, or they're a liar. Because I think like most of the people that I know who I really respect are like, yeah, I control X, Y, and Z, but it's really not much of a live set.
Yeah, you got some Chiptunes music going this week. I believe one of your projects is Chiptunesy.
Yeah, this is not going to be for free PD. This is for a personal project that I was working on for a while. I kind of took a break from, but I'm now trying to get back into. It's called 8-Bit Betty. I am doing a cover of a Prince song. I'm not going to say which one, but it has an accompanied animated video. As it turns out, animating things by hand is really hard, and I learned that the hard way.
You didn't know. Whoa, back up, my friend. You did not realize that animation is hard?
Of course, I understood animation was hard, but like you knowing that something is hard and experiencing the difficulty of it are two different things.
Okay, I'll give you that. Like the depth of the despair.
Yeah, I did
when you try to animate.
I did a rotoscope, so I didn't even. I mean, I'm not a visual artist by any stretch of the imagination, so actually animating something is not really up my alley. I ended up tracing frames of video, like frame by frame. And even that is incredibly backbreaking work. And I was trying to
that's why they have software for it.
Yeah, the software doesn't look as good though. I mean, I really wanted like a hand touch to it. It's a little bit too clean. I mean, a lot of times the software that does it looks like a filter because it more or less is.
It is.
Yeah, that's what it is. And I kind of didn't want that. I wanted it to have more expressiveness to it. I can control the line a little bit better. So I just took a Wacom tablet, Photoshop, and a video, split it up into frames, and just traced frame by frame. I will probably never do that again. It was
can't figure out why.
Yeah. So animators out there, heaps of respect.
Oh my God, we love you so much.
You'll never understand the pain until you actually try it. And I wasn't even doing anything good. Like, I mean, these people are like creating their own worlds with multiple characters and interacting with things on set or whatever. I was just tracing a face. That was it.
Well, hopefully that'll give me a hint for which Prince tune it's going to be.
You can probably get a pretty good idea. Maybe not. I'm hoping to wrap this up in the next couple of days, and I'll probably release it sometime next week because I need to build up a little bit of hype for it. But that's my goal.
Very cool.
All right, that's all I got. But I guess that's
quite enough.
That's the show for the week.
All right. Thanks for hanging out.
Cue the music.
Cue the music.
We'll be back again next week talking about something brand spanking new, some issues that are probably plaguing everybody, or maybe just us. I'm Brian T.O. This is Kevin MacLeod. Until next time, keep on writing.